On this episode of ResiWeek, we wrap up 2021 and look towards 2022 with our friends Amanda and Giles. All this and more on this episode of ResiWeek.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is ResiWeek, episode 309, The Virtual Year.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by FSR.
Welcome to this episode of ResiWeek. This is your weekly roundup of all the latest news and stories for the residential AV industry. I'm your host, Matty Scott for AVNation.tv, and this week I'm pleased to be joined by two of my good friends. First, we have Amanda Wildman. She's the co-owner of True Media Home. How you doing, Amanda?
Very good, Matt. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. And then we have my good friend, Mr. Giles Sutton. He is the SVP of Member Success and Sales over at Cedia. How you doing, Giles?
Doing really well, Matt, and even better for seeing you and Amanda. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm just glad you mentioned me before Amanda, because now I don't feel like an add-on. It's gonna be one of those shows, ladies and gentlemen, because this is our Christmas show, the wrap up of the year. So we got no stories, nothing tantalizing, because it's the last. There's nothing going on. There's nothing news right now. So I wanted to kick this off with the normal things that we do at the end of the year. And Amanda, I'll start with you. What was your biggest story of 2021? When you look back on 2021, what is going to be that one thing that kind of sticks out in your mind as the most important story of the year?
Oh gosh, I think it was, for me, probably trying to figure out and navigate this whole how do we get back together again thing. How did we deal with Expo, coming up? How did we deal with, just being around other people? I mean, every one of us so desperately wants to be around other people, and to see our friends. I mean, this is the longest that we have been without seeing each other, face to face and direct, having these conversations. And I think our industry is really, really hungry for it. But we said, it was, what do we do? How do we navigate that? How do we be responsible? I think that they did a really good job this year at Expo. But it's been difficult. I mean, we are a global association, and how do we have those relationships, and how do we get that information across without being able to have those organic conversations? And so it was another year of that. And so I'm hoping that 2022 is where we can maybe start fixing some of that, where we can see each other more. But we just were having a previous call. I don't know how well that's going to work.
Well, that's a bright point to end it on. Thanks. This is supposed to be the happy, cheerful show.
Well, hey, I got to see people. I didn't get to see you, but I got to see Tim Albright in person. We shared a hug.
I'm so sorry.
Did a side hug. Oh, come on. Yeah. I love him.
It's fine. He doesn't listen to the show. He'll be fine. Giles, what kind of same question to you? What was the biggest story of the year? Getting your old job back?
Yeah. I'm sure everyone. That's absolutely all the headlines, isn't it? That's the biggest news story for sure, right?
Giles is back as SVP, baby.
I mean, mine is kind of related to what Amanda said. I agree. I think 2020 was the virtual year. That was the year we all were kind of getting comfortable with everything being virtual. 2021 was us desperately craving, getting back together again in person and actually, experiencing live events and just navigating the year with different locations opening and closing and just having to deal with that. But I think the overarching story for me which is related to that, is that actually, across the board, business has been really strong for the whole market, and surprisingly so. And we've seen that in a lot of the stories this year, and a lot of the conferences that have happened. That's been the headline, is that with the C Pro 100s and all the other groups, everyone is experiencing a lot of growth, and at the same time that friction with the supply chain issues, huge demand because the property market pretty much everywhere is booming. that coupled with the supply chain issues. So those have been the stories that I think have been the biggest for the year. It's just everyone's doing okay. We survived, thankfully, and as an industry managed to navigate a really, really turbulent time. But what we probably all need now is more time coming together, learning, educating our teams, focusing on the professional development of our teams and certifications, and that really being the focus for the year ahead as we look to professionalize our businesses more.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'll add that to me, I think the biggest story that just kept coming up beyond the obvious, like COVID one, which we're not going to mention because I think you got enough of it. But the supply chain. The chip shortage, the absolute inability of anyone to ship anything, was always this year was definitely the biggest story that we hit. We almost talked. I don't want to say we talked about it every week, but we pretty much talked about it in some way, shape, or form once a month. Like, it was the predominant story, and it's still going on. I got a report this morning that Intel is saying that they don't expect it to get better till late 2023, and that's Intel. I don't know if there's a bigger company to throw weight around getting their stuff made than Intel.
They know a thing or two about chips.
One or two little things, Heck, they even have their own trademark jingle for them. Boo-doo-doo-doo.
But what was interesting, Matt, though, is our community, I think, did a really good job of coming together and sharing ideas and resources. Because when someone would be like, hey, I'm having a shortage on this, does anybody have one of those?
Yeah.
Does anybody know where to source this or where to get that? And I think that's one of the unique things about our industry and about our community is how many channels we have to help communicate. And I think manufacturers, for the most part, when they realized we just wanted to know, they did okay. When they realized we weren't just going to rip their head off, we just didn't want the date to keep moving. So we're like, we'd rather you tell us worst case scenario, first, kind of a thing. Once we got that, but within the community, there were people passing, back and forth, hey, who can get this amp? Or, what projector are you finding for this project? And I think, too, because people maybe did substitutions, people learned maybe about different product lines, too. And so that's, I think, kind of interesting. We make do. We're the industry of, we get it done. Where there's a will, there's a way, and we're going to figure it out. It might take a little longer, but...
It is what it is. Giles, what did you see from a tech standpoint? I know this year was light in new tech for sure, but what did you see as kind of the biggest impact? What tech made the biggest impact this year?
I think it was still carrying on probably from the year before, but I think it's just some of these trends take a little longer to actually become something that actually integrators implement in their day-to-day businesses. And for me, the biggest one is probably lighting, and lighting fixtures probably became an even bigger thing this year. I think what was interesting, what it wasn't, which we predicted it to be, was probably the resi-mercial and work from home wasn't quite as big as we thought it was going to be. And that came up at some recent conferences. And that actually a lot of businesses are actually trying harder to get their employees back into the office, and that being the approach. But yeah, certainly I think lighting continues to be extremely strong. And that really, that trend with fixtures and how that then leads on to wellness technology, I think there's been again, that trend I think we'll probably see growing even more into next year, I would think, as integrators become central to a lot of those discussions that are being had when homes are being designed, with architects and designers sort of leading with making healthy homes and how technology can be used to implement that.
Yeah, it's real good. Amanda, same question to you. What tech stood out to you as having kind of the biggest impact in either the industry or your company or your clients?
With us, I mean, obviously lighting was such a huge thing. I mean, to echo that, that was huge for us this last year. But I think for us, it's been developing our vocabulary as an industry, because we've had a lot more access to online training, not just within our own channel, but within other channels. So we've been able to add on and maybe talk more designer speak, or talk more architectural speak, or talk more wellness speak. I mean, CEDIA put together the wellness, or the WellCon, their WellCon conference, and a lot of those people were technologies that maybe integrators we haven't touched before, we haven't worked with before, and it was exciting to see, like, okay, we might not necessarily like tomorrow dive right in on all of those. Like, I don't know how much my company is going to get right now into water purification and that kind of thing, but I was able to build a lot of my knowledge base and build a lot of my vocabulary around that I have resources that I can speak intelligently about that, and figuring out how do I as an integrator partner with these other things. Because I always think, like, the integrator, like, we're the heartbeat, we're the lifeblood, right? We're the nervous system. We maybe don't have to be the expert on every individual piece, like the HVAC piece, or, the humidity or the water or whatever, but we are the ones that bring it all together. We're the ones that help, provide all that reporting, make things work easier. And so for me, it was just a big thing of, like, developing our knowledge base, developing our vocabulary, talking about wellness. I'd never spoken really about wellness before, probably this last year. Now it seems to be like one of those buzzwords that everybody wants to know. Well, what can I do for technology for wellness in my home? So,
Hey, thanks for watching the first segment of this week's episode. To catch the entire show, please click the link below or visit avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv.